Before we begin, please leave a comment, share your thoughts and let us know your lessons learned in the comment section below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. In the heart of a forgotten land, where the wind carried more dust than hope and the soil cracked beneath bare feet, lay a village untouched by time but burdened by poverty. It was a place where the sun scorched dreams and rain came only when the gods felt merciful. The people survived, not thrived, and they feared those who dreamed too loudly. Among them lived Malik, a young man in the bloom of youth, with strong hands, a lean frame, and eyes that once held wonder but now flickered with frustration. He had tried everything. He sold mangoes at the market, fixed broken carts, even attempted to return to school until the fees broke his spirit. Yet, every step forward ended in another wall, and every time he reached out, the village slapped his hand away with laughter or silence. They called him empty-headed. They whispered that he was cursed. And perhaps, in some way, Malik began to believe it. At night, he would sit on the edge of the village, his elbows resting on his knees, eyes lifted to the stars like a man begging the sky to answer. He longed for more, not just money, but respect, power, purpose. He didn't want to be the boy the elders pitied or the children mocked. He wanted to walk through the market and have people step aside. He wanted to come home to a house with real walls, not mud patched over cracks. He wanted to be feared or admired, anything but invisible. Then came the old man. It happened on a sweltering afternoon when Malik sat near the edge of the market, trying to sell spoiling bananas no one wanted. The heat was unbearable, and the flies were relentless. That's when he noticed an old man watching him from the shadows beneath a tree. His clothes were torn, but his posture was regal, his eyes sharp and calculating. When he finally approached, his voice was no louder than a whisper, yet it sliced through the market noise. "You carry hunger in your eyes," the man said. "Not the kind for food, the kind for change." Malik blinked, unsure whether to answer. "Who are you? A messenger, perhaps, or just an old man with a story to tell? But I know where you can find the power to never be laughed at again." He spoke of a sorcerer, a fetishist who lived beyond the dry hills, past the dead river, in a place only the desperate dared to reach. The sorcerer, he claimed, had helped men rise from dirt to gold, from forgotten to feared, but his help came at a price, a sacrifice of innocence. Malik scoffed. Witchcraft was for fools and cowards. Yet that night, he couldn't sleep. The words repeated like a drum in his skull. What if it was true? What if there was a way out? 3 days later, carrying only a bottle of water and a heart full of doubt, Malik set off into the barren wilds to find the one they called Old Koro. The journey was brutal. The sun bore down on him like judgment. Thorns ripped at his legs. Buzzards circled overhead as if already mourning him. But he kept going. Each painful step was fueled by memories of laughter, by the sting of shame. "They will respect me. They will all regret it." By sunset, he arrived. Old Koro's hut was hidden behind twisted trees, their branches clawing at the sky like dead fingers. Smoke curled from the crooked chimney. Bones, animal or otherwise, hung from the trees like warning signs. Malik swallowed hard and knocked. The door creaked open, and the stench of old herbs and decay hid him. Koro stood before him, gaunt and still, as if he'd been expecting Malik all along. "I know why you're here," the old man said, his voice like dry leaves. Malik explained his desperation, his failures, his fury. Koro listened silently, then nodded. "You want to rise, but to rise, something must fall." "What do you mean?" Malik asked, though deep down, he knew. "A ritual, one older than this land. You must find a woman untouched by the world, a soul still pure. She must trust you, marry you, and be offered. In exchange, you shall receive wealth, respect, power." Malik froze. The air grew cold. "You mean, I have to kill someone?" he asked. Barely a whisper. Koro's smile was slow, crooked. "Not someone, the right one. Only then will the gods listen." Malik ran. His feet carried him through the dark, back to the village, away from the madness. But inside, something had shifted. He wasn't the same. Days passed. He tried to forget the encounter. But everywhere he looked, he saw failure. He heard laughter. He saw his future, crumbling and small. And so, he began to search. In a neighboring village, he found her. Naya. She was unlike the other women, quiet, reserved, modest. She sold vegetables with calm eyes and a soft voice. She had no parents, no family, no past anyone could speak of. When he first spoke to her, she smiled, not flirtatiously, but gently, like someone who had no need to impress. To Malik, she was perfect. He told himself it was a mission, a means to an end. But each day, as he brought her small gifts, bracelets, mangoes, fresh water, he began to forget the ritual. He began to crave her attention, not just her soul. She listened when he spoke. She laughed at his stories. Sometimes, he caught her staring into the distance, a shadow in her eyes that puzzled him. She seemed sad, like she was carrying something too heavy for her small frame. One day, as they walked by a river, he asked, "Why are you always alone, Naya?" She looked at him for a long time, then said, "Some of us are born to walk alone, but that doesn't mean we want to." Malik didn't know what to say. He just stared at her, something twisting inside his chest. Still, the ritual clawed at his mind. Naya was everything Koro had asked for. She was innocent, pure, trusting, the perfect sacrifice. And yet, every time she smiled, Malik felt something crack inside. Every time she placed a hand on his arm or brought him a bowl of food, he felt the ritual slip further away. But he reminded himself, this is your only chance. He couldn't afford to fail. Not again, not when he was this close to becoming someone. Malik stood at the edge of a decision that would change his life forever. Naya had become more than a target. She had become a presence that lingered in his thoughts, both soothing and tormenting. Still, the promise of the ritual, the words of old Koro, whispered louder in his ears than her laughter. He reminded himself over and over, this is the only way out. The only way to be free from failure. But with every passing day, the line between sacrifice and attachment blurred. He began his courtship in earnest, no longer just to win her trust, but also to silence the guilt building in his heart. He washed his face each morning, picked clean clothes, and made sure his hands were not stained from the day before. He brought Naya sweet fruits from the market, beads crafted into bracelets, and sometimes even flowers he picked himself along the riverbank. Naya accepted everything with grace, always thanking him with a smile that somehow seemed both warm and distant. She never asked for more, never questioned his sudden affection. Malik found her simplicity disarming, almost unnatural. They spent hours together under the trees or beside the stream where children used to play. Malik told her stories of his youth, of games and scars and silly village rumors. She laughed sometimes, softly, as though she were trying not to wake something sleeping deep inside her. But she never talked about herself. Whenever he asked where she had grown up, or what had happened to her parents, her answer was always vague. "They're gone," she would say, or, "I don't remember much." Sometimes she would change the subject, eyes drifting away toward something only she could see. Still, Malik pushed forward. He couldn't afford hesitation. He had made a promise to himself, to Koro, to the gods of fortune and power. He proposed to Naya on a quiet evening while the wind rustled the trees and the stars began to blink into view. His hands trembled as he held hers. "I want to build a life with you," he said, his voice barely steady. "You make everything feel different." Naya studied him for a long moment before answering. Her eyes were deep and unreadable. "Different can be dangerous," she said, but then she smiled faintly and nodded. "Yes, Malik, I will marry you." The words hit him harder than he expected. A knot formed in his stomach, tight and painful. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like betrayal. The ceremony was small, almost secret. Naya had no family to invite, and Malik insisted on keeping things simple. Just a few neighbors, no music, no feast. She wore a simple white dress and a crown of woven grass and tiny wildflowers. Her beauty that day was quiet but haunting. As she stood beside him, Malik felt as though the village air had grown heavier, as if the spirits themselves were watching. That night, they shared a meal in silence. Malik could hardly look at her. She ate slowly, with that same distant calm, as if she already knew the storm he was hiding. In the weeks that followed, Naya moved into Malik's small home. She brought with her a silence that filled the house in a strange way, comforting, but unshakably eerie. She cooked, cleaned, and cared for him with tender devotion. She never complained, never asked questions, never acted like a woman waiting for anything more than the quiet life they now shared. But Malik's mind was a battlefield. The nights were the worst. He would lie awake beside her, staring at the ceiling, his hands cold and wet with sweat. He'd hear her crying in the darkness, her sobs muffled under her breath. He pretended not to notice, even when every tear she shed felt like it was carving into his skin. One night, he asked softly, "Why do you cry?" Naya turned away, her voice barely audible. "Sometimes the past knocks when the world is quiet." She would say no more. Malik didn't push. He was afraid of what he might hear. And yet, there was more than sorrow in their home. There were whispers, soft and low, barely audible in the wind that slid through the cracks in the walls. Candles would extinguish on their own. Shadows moved in corners that were supposed to be empty. Sometimes, Malik would see Naya standing still, staring at nothing. Her lips would move without sound, as if speaking to someone who wasn't there. He told himself it was nerves, his imagination, the pressure, the guilt. Still, the ritual approached. Old Koro had given him instructions. The sacrifice had to be done in an abandoned house. At midnight, under silence, the woman must be bound, and certain words, ancient and dark, must be spoken aloud before the blade is drawn. Do not falter, the sorcerer had warned him, eyes burning like coals. If your heart hesitates, the ritual will fail, and the gods will turn against you. Malik prepared in secret. He found the house, an old structure deep in the woods, abandoned and rotting, a place that even animals avoided. He gathered the items he'd need, the ropes, the oil lamp, and the knife with the curved blade, given by Koro himself. Every day, he stared at Naya, trying to convince himself she was just a tool, a step in the path, a price he had to pay. But every time she placed a hand on his shoulder, or smiled at him when he returned home, something cracked deeper inside him. One afternoon, as they sat together outside, she spoke. "Malik," she said softly, "what would you give for happiness?" He hesitated. "Anything," he answered without thinking. Nayat tilted her head. "Even someone else's life?" His breath caught. He stared at her, unsure what to say, but she looked away before he could respond. The conversation ended there, but it stayed with him, echoing long after night had fallen. And yet, the plan continued. Malik became distant, quiet. He avoided Naya's gaze. She, in turn, said nothing, but her eyes were different now, less trusting, more knowing. He wondered if she sensed something, if she suspected, but she never questioned his behavior. She simply continued as if all was well. The night of the ritual arrived. Malik had told Naya he wanted to take her somewhere special, a surprise. She smiled and agreed without protest. She wore a modest dress and followed him into the forest like a lamb. But as they walked, her silence felt heavier than ever. Malik tried to speak, to distract her, maybe himself, but the words wouldn't come. The air was thick, the sky was starless, and the path ahead seemed darker than it should have been. When they reached the old house, Malik's hands were shaking. He lit the lamp, and the light danced on the broken walls. He turned to her, heart pounding. "I want to play a game," he said, forcing a smile. Naya didn't respond. She just looked at him. He pulled out the rope. And still, she didn't run. She just whispered, "A game?" The rope slipped through Malik's trembling fingers like a serpent sensing danger. His hands, once firm with intention, now shook uncontrollably as he wrapped the strands around Naya's wrists. She didn't resist. She didn't speak. She simply looked at him with eyes that no longer seemed human, eyes that saw through the darkness, through his skin, straight into his soul. The oil lamp on the broken table flickered wildly, casting twisted shadows along the cracked walls of the abandoned house. Outside, the wind howled like a mourning widow. Inside, silence was a beast crouched in the corners, waiting. Malik took a step back. He fumbled for the knife. Its curved blade gleamed with unnatural light, as if it too hungered for something. Then Naya spoke. "Malik," she said, her voice calm, almost tender, "I know what you're about to do." He froze. Her words hit like thunder, shattering the fragile walls of his resolve. He stared at her, eyes wide, mouth open, but no sound came. "I've always known," she continued, "since the first day." Malik backed away. "That's not, how could you?" Her lips curled into a sad smile. "You were never subtle. The way you watched me. The way you looked scared when I smiled. I saw the doubt growing in you. I heard you whisper to yourself when you thought I was asleep." The blade clattered to the floor. Naya's eyes shimmered in the lamplight. But not with fear. With power. "You were right about one thing," she whispered. "I am not like the others." Malik's knees gave out. He collapsed to the floor. The knife between them like a dead truth. "I died, Malik," Naya said, her voice lower now. 5 years ago. A man, greedy like you, married me. Then took me to the edge of the world to please a sorcerer. He offered my life for his desires. And when he killed me, he thought it was over." Tears burned Malik's eyes. "No," he croaked. "That can't be. My spirit remained," she said, "trapped, angry, alone, until the gods gave me a new purpose, to return. To test the hearts of men who seek power at any cost. Men like you." She stood now, effortlessly. The ropes that bound her fell away as if they'd never existed. Her form began to shift. Not gruesome, but unearthly. Her eyes were no longer brown, but glowing with an ancient blue light. Her hair floated around her like it was underwater. The shadows no longer reached her. She was the light now, and it was terrifying. Malik tried to stand, to run, to scream, but his body wouldn't listen. He could only stare as she stepped closer. "I gave you kindness," she said. "I gave you my time, my smile, my trust, and you still chose this path. You tried to kill me again. I'm sorry," he whispered. "Regret," Naya said, "comes when it is too late." The lamp exploded in a burst of blue flame. Malik screamed, shielding his face. When he looked again, she was gone. Gone, not walked out. Not escaped, but vanished. As if the night had swallowed her whole. He stumbled out of the house. Into the black forest. The trees closed around him. Branches scraping his face like accusing fingers. Whispers followed him, Naya's voice. Over and over. "I know what you're about to do." He ran until his legs gave out. Collapsing at the edge of the village. He didn't remember getting home. He only remembered the silence in the air. The absence of warmth in his bed. And the way the shadows now seemed to move when he blinked. From that night forward, Malik was not the same. He tried to return to normal life. He smiled at neighbors. Tried to restart his small trade. But the people looked at him differently now. The children who once mocked him now avoided him entirely. Dogs growled at him in the street. Birds stopped chirping when he walked by. Naya was everywhere. He saw her reflection in mirrors, even when he was alone. He smelled the soft scent of her hair in his pillow. He heard her voice whispering in the walls, sometimes singing the lullabies she used to hum while cooking. But her voice was colder now, detached. A song without a soul. At night, he dreamed of her eyes. He would wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, begging for forgiveness into the darkness. But the only answer was silence. Or worse, laughter. That soft, lilting laugh that had once comforted him now curdled his blood. His home decayed around him. Windows cracked without reason. Food rotted overnight. Plants withered when he touched them. The walls dripped with water even in the dry season. It was as if the house itself had been cursed. Desperate, he returned to old Koro. The sorcerer answered the door with a scowl. "You again?" "She wasn't real," Malik shouted. "She was already dead. Why didn't you tell me?" "You were told to find a pure soul," Koro said coldly. "Not a spirit. She knew everything. She judged me. She cursed me. She gave you what you deserved." Malik fell to his knees. "Please, tell me how to fix this. Anything. I'll do anything." "There is nothing," Koro snapped. "You tried to manipulate the dead. You offered betrayal to someone who had already suffered. Now you are bound to that suffering. You are her curse, and she is yours." He slammed the door. From that day on, Malik became a ghost in his own village. He spoke to no one. He wandered aimlessly, muttering apologies to shadows. He sat by the forest every day, staring into the trees where it all began, whispering her name. "Naya, I'm sorry." Sometimes, villagers claimed to see her too. A woman in white near the abandoned house. Her hair floating like smoke. Her eyes glowing like stars. And always, she was watching. Children were warned, don't lie, don't steal, and never break a kind heart, or Naya will find you. Malik's name became legend, a cautionary tale, a ghost story. But he lived. That was the curse. To live with what he'd done. To wake each day and feel the emptiness beside him. To reach for her in the night and find only cold sheets. To walk the world with the weight of betrayal pressing on his shoulders. He had wanted wealth. He had received eternity. not of riches, but of regret.